On today's episode, we get to the valve cover gaskets and spark plugs on the Forester XT. Welcome back to the Auto Obsessive Garage. Chadwick with you again for another installment of Project OG FXT. That is our 2004 Forester XT that you can see behind me. What we're doing today is a pretty involved job. On some cars, this is a very quick job, usually just a matter of minutes, but on the Subaru front, it's a little more trickier than that. So we're going to be replacing the valve cover gaskets. We do have a leak, at least on the passenger side, and why not do both, because we're crazy like that. Spark plugs don't have a history of that as being replaced anytime recently on the service record, so I am going to go ahead and replace all the spark plugs while I'm in there. It just makes sense. So step by step, I'm going to show you how to do this job in the most logical way possible, at least logical as my mind understands it, which probably is up for debate. But anyway, let's get in the garage and get some work done. To greatly improve access to the valve cover on the passenger side of the vehicle, removing the airbox is a very good thing to do. So we're just gonna pop that off. I'm just gonna unplug the MAF. Jeez, never had a MAF stuck on that hard. Okay. There we go. This box should just pop right out. Yep, like so. Not a bad idea to clean the dirt and dust and some leaves and stuff out of here while you have it out. Inner box out of the way. It's going to give us really good access to the valve cover over here. Usually have some leaves and stuff in here too if you got an older vehicle, so I'm going to vacuum that out. But yep, just making this a lot easier of a job for us. We're on the passenger side of the vehicle. You can see the valve cover right here. A couple things to note. We do have to disconnect these two lines here before removing it. Every bolt around the outside, and I believe there are 8, are 10 millimeter. The exception are the coil pack bolts that hold the coil packs in down here and here. Those are 12 millimeter bolts. So you'll need a 10 and 12 millimeter socket. And other than that, pretty straightforward. You do have this O2 sensor wire. Down there you can see that little clamp that holds it in. Just that comes off with the coil pack. So be wary of that when you install it again. You don't want the O2 wire to be dangling. But other than that, should be pretty straightforward. Now this is the easier one to access. Start with disconnecting the coil packs, the electrical connectors. All right, with the coil packs disconnected, we can go ahead and actually pull these coil packs out. It's a 12 millimeter bolt securing it. So just go ahead and back those out and you should be able to pull them out. Literally just enough room to get the coil pack out. Perhaps. There we go. Cool. I try to put these back in the same order, so just kind of organize as you're going along. Once you loosen that bolt, you do have your O2 sensor bracket you can remove. Slide it out of the way, whatever's easier for you. Push it right back out of the way, it's fine. And there's our last one on the passenger side. Coil pack out. If you're messing around with anything with different sized bolts that go in specific places, this is what I've been doing for a very long time and it works. As you can see, this is the valve cover bolts for the right side of the engine or passenger side. And also you can see that we are missing a bolt right here. So that kind of explains our valve cover leak on the passenger side. That's interesting. So I'm going to source one of those. What I need to make sure is I get the right length, because as you can see, there are two distinct lengths here. So you've got some longer ones and you got some shorter ones. So I need to look on the other side of the engine, see what bolt goes there, whether it's a long or short, and order one of those up. Because trying to secure a new valve cover gasket without all the bolts in is a guaranteed way to have oil leaks. But this is a good way to keep yourself straight. It's in the pattern it is on the valve cover. And I marked it right side. We'll do the same with the driver's side when we get there. But now time to pull that valve cover. All right, with the hoses disconnected, all the bolts out, let's go ahead and remove this valve cover on the passenger side. Everything's a little tight over here, so you're gonna have to do some moving around here. There we go. Up she comes. Perfect. And as you guys can see, we were missing this bolt down here in this corner. So that's definitely going to be something that leads, or at least contributes majorly, as I drip oil over everything, to an oil leak from your valve cover area. So we're going to go ahead and clean this up. Go ahead and source that bolt so we can secure our new valve cover gaskets. In my quest to keep everything OEM, I've sourced the actual Subaru branded spark plugs. Now clearly they're NGKs, and I'll have the part number for you too. But I've sourced the actual Subaru ones, which is just super cool, hard to come by. But here's the NGK part number if you guys are looking for that. Right here on the end, that's the actual NGK number if you're looking for that. The NGK ILFR6B. But let's go ahead and put these on. Best way to remove spark plugs from a Subaru engine like this is to use obviously a 5/8 inch socket, specifically for spark plugs with a rubber insulator. Basically I push that in, make sure it's secure on the spark plug, and then I use a 3-inch extension for a 3/8 inch ratchet, and then I put the ratchet on in that order. It's a little tricky, but you have a little more space with the valve cover off, so let's do that and see how the old spark plugs look. All right, we've got our first plug out. Not looking too bad. A little bit of a crud on the end there, but aside from that, looking pretty good. Not soaked in gas or oil or anything like that, so it's always a good sign. Let's go ahead and it's the right part number, which is always great to see. Let's go ahead and throw our fresh plugs in. Here we are on the back side of the valve cover. The gasket material is still soft and rubbery to the touch, so this was replaced since this car does have over 200,000 miles on it, and this would be hard and brittle plastic if it was never replaced before, and that's probably why this bolt was missing. So, time to pry that out. You want to do it carefully, just kind of pull it up from the actual valve cover, take all that off, and now when you go to replace the valve cover gasket, just know there are different part numbers. So I am using, again, trying to put an emphasis on OEM Subaru stuff. So let's see if we can get there we go. That's the actual part number. You can see it says right hand. That's going to be the passenger side of the vehicle, the side you're currently doing. And then you're going to need 2 of these rocker, I believe they call them rocker gaskets. These cover the spark plug holes. They are the same part number for both left and right hand sides of the vehicle. So just got to get 4 of those when you're getting your materials. So let's go ahead and pry up these and press the new ones in. There's the old gasket material removed. Now before you slap your new gasket material in there, you want to go ahead and clean these channels. You can see they get pretty gnarly, and any kind of material left in there can possibly cause an oil leak in the future, and you don't want to have to do this job twice, do we? So let's go ahead, clean out all those channels, just make sure there's no debris in there. Take a paper towel, dry up all that oil, excess material that's in there, and we should be good to go to slap the new gasket home. Before I install the new gaskets, I do like to take some RTV, preferably this ultra grade that I use on almost every valve cover, and go ahead and put a very thin coat in this channel around in the rocker area too. And the reason being is just the extra insurance. Now, don't go too crazy here. You don't want a lot flowing out and potentially getting back into your valve train. So just a thin coat in there and allow the gasket to adhere to it. Makes installation a little easier too. So I'm gonna do that, and then we're gonna slap the new gasket in there. We've got our new gaskets installed on the valve cover with that RTV securing them in place. Now it's just time to put it back on the vehicle. Now we did order that extra bolt, so that should be coming. We'll put that on eventually when it comes in. It should be here in a couple days actually. But you do want to make sure you use all those bolts, guys. You do not want a valve cover leak on this engine. A, it's a pain in the butt to get to. B, it leaks on your exhaust and makes an awesome smell, and usually smoke. So let's go ahead and install this back on the vehicle. We can't have a valve cover that looks like this, even though no one's gonna look at this for another 100,000+ miles. Let's clean her up a little bit, shall we? I did want to show the cleaned up valve cover. It's not perfect. Just give it a quick little cleanup. It's the little things, remember guys? Let's go ahead and slap it back on the car. We've got our shiny cleaned up valve cover back in place with the coil packs attached. Those hoses attached, everything else is good. It is all snugged in. Something I did find that made things a little easier was taking the coil packs and going from underneath the vehicle to get them in place, because it is a very tight squeeze getting them down through to connect to the new spark plugs we put in there. So just keep that in mind. I went from the underneath of the car, but it's looking good. Can't wait to do that driver's side next. Our missing bolt has finally come in. Something to be aware of, there are the long and short ones, which you guys saw. The long ones are 37mm. Here's the exact part number from Subaru if you need to replace a long one. So I'm gonna go ahead and slap this back on because I don't like valve cover leaks. Let's do it up. We're gonna go ahead and step up the difficulty here on the driver's side. As you can see, the valve cover gasket is buried down in there. We've already pulled our battery to create some room, but we still need more. This windshield washer reservoir is gonna be the next item we pull. Now, something to be aware of, mine has quite a bit of fluid in it. Of course it does. If you don't, you can just go ahead and remove it pretty easily. You do have to disconnect, so I'm gonna get some fluid loss here, whatever. Not a big deal. You can siphon some off, do whatever you want, but I think I'm just gonna pull it out and run across my garage like a maniac dripping windshield washer fluid, so cool. But yep, we're gonna go ahead and pull that. We're gonna do something with these wires that you can see down in there. Disconnect those. One of these alternator wires is gonna go as well, just so we can get that access. You saw how cramped it was on the other side without all this stuff in the way, so let's make ourselves some space. To preserve what's left of my sanity, I've gone ahead and started removing things. You can see the windshield washer fluid reservoir is completely gone, freeing up that space. I've also taken the battery terminals, you can see the positive here, and used this little clamp here to kind of hold them out of the way. Next we have these large clusters of cables. We can disconnect those, and also this alternator cable that goes to the alternator, we can pull that out of the way. We want to have access to this whole area here so we can pull that valve cover straight up. So next I'm going to disconnect these, move everything out of the way, and show you what I got. Just a heads up when I'm doing the alternator, this one came off easy. It's just a 12mm, not holding it down, but this plug was a pain in the butt to get out. I mean, we do have 200,000 miles, so that's going to happen. It connects right here on the side of the alternator. Oh boy, so just a heads up, those are free now. We can take them, tuck them out of the way, and we'll make some more room for ourselves. Now we're working with some prime real estate. We've moved all these wires to the center here, took that whole bracket out. We still got these guys over here, but as you can see down in there, we have a clear shot, well, as clear as it's gonna get to that valve cover gasket, so not too shabby. All right, let's clean this area up a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and pull that valve cover off. Pretty much the same as the passenger side. You do wanna take the oil fill neck off, which is connected up here. And that's not too hard to do. So we're gonna do all that. Go ahead and pull this off. Same deal as before, new gaskets, new spark plugs. As you guys can see, the passenger side valve cover is pretty gnarly, so we gotta really clean all this up. So let's get some degreaser, clean it up, and then we'll take it out. With as much accessibility as we're gonna get to this driver's side valve cover, let's go ahead and start removing everything we need to. Unlike the other side where we had the two hoses attached, this side we do have the oil fill piping there. You can see it coming from the top down in there. So we'll undo those 10mm bolts. There's another bracket, and then the other 10mm bolts. But first, let's pull those coil packs off and get this valve cover off the car. With the 3 bolts holding the oil fill tube to the valve cover, you can go ahead and wiggle it and pull it straight up. And there we go. Next, we're going to do those hoses in the back. We love popping those off. Both the driver's side coil packs are now out. Time to pull those 10mm bolts and get the rest of that valve cover out of there. With everything removed, we should be able to pull that valve cover out just like so. And boy, she needs a cleanup. All right, let's take care of that. And definitely, some new gasket material. Let's get her done. So before we put that valve cover back on, another thing you need to replace are the 2 half-moon crescent plastic pieces that you need to do on each side of the engine. It's super simple, and you're gonna wanna use RTV on these as well. Let me see if I can get it actually focused. One is at the end of the cam, the other is kind of at the diagonal corner. You can see the black section down there. You wanna do those, you wanna put a little RTV, push them into place firmly, and then go ahead and put your valve cover on top. Another easy step. Subaru part number, very readily available. There's a lot of 4 cylinders and other engines that have components like this. This is really no different. Just make sure you clean, again, the actual head of the engine where you're going to put the valve cover back down, and make sure it's nice and clean. Put the thin layer of RTV and press those into place. Again, there's 2 on each side. Super easy. We've got the driver's side valve cover, nice and cleaned up, back in place, tightened down with a new gasket. Time to attach those hoses and the filler neck again. But looking real good. Way better than she looked before, right? Nice and clean. All right, let's button it all back up and cover it up so no one ever sees it. And we've got our oil fill neck cleaned up and installed back into the valve cover. Of course we cleaned up that hardware. Next up, we're gonna put those coil packs back on. We've got everything put together on the driver's side valve cover now. You can see the oil fill tube and the two hoses connected, and we have our coil packs all plugged in, ready to go. Everything's looking a lot cleaner than we started off, right? Remember, this was totally coated in oil and grease, and now it looks really good. Nice valve cover gasket, all there, all sealed up. Yeah, that's the way to do things. All right, all set with the valve covers on the Subaru Forester XT. Time to put everything back on the car now that the valve covers are installed, all cleaned up, everything's connected. It's looking really good. Engine bay's looking a lot cleaner too. As you can see here on the driver's side, nice and clean, everything's hooked up. Coil packs are back plugged in, all the hoses, all the connectors, the oil fill line there. Everything is looking great. We can put the windshield washer reservoir back in. We'll leave the battery out just for ease of timing belt access. And we'll put the airbox back in and put a new filter in. I'll show you guys something, a little shortcut here. To keep my windshield washer reservoir from leaking all over the place, we have a little length of hose there connecting. If I had vacuum line caps, I probably would have used those, but this little line works just great. So we'll use that and install this back in the car. Let's button her back up and finish off the valve cover job. With the bottom part of our airbox put in after being cleaned, we're gonna slap in a nice quality Wix filter. Here's the part number for this vehicle. Let's go ahead and slap that in now. Get our new air filter installed, and before I install the top part of the air filter box, I do want to give that MAF a nice clean. Use some improved mass airflow cleaner spray. It's a good thing to do, especially since I found a lot of dirt and dust in mine, indicative of some off-road use. That MAF sensor can get covered in a good coat of dust and oily mixture over time and not work as well as it should. So this is a little incentive, plus you have it open, why not do it? So I'm gonna give it a spray and then reassemble the rest of the airbox. You can see how clean our MAF is now. You can see the sensor there, the shiny metal. It was completely coated with just black carbon and just nasty buildup over the years. So if the spray isn't enough to get that clean, you can use a Q-tip and gently clean off that kind of buildup. But it should be good to go now, fully operational. I wasn't having any issues before, but once they get really dirty, they can have all kinds of drivability issues. So nice little preventative step there. With our airbox all cleaned up and installed with the new air filter, do not forget to reattach your MAF. You'll have all kinds of issues with that. It simply goes over there. Here, clips in there, boom. New air filter installed on our airbox. We've got our windshield washer reservoirs back installed in the Subaru Forester XT. As you can see, we connected the alternator wires and this whole rat's nest of cables down there. All reconnected. We've got the water lines hooked back up to the windshield washer fluid. Of course, you're gonna squirt a little fluid there if you haven't drained your thing, but yeah, now there's a clean spot down there. But here it is. It's kind of a pain in the butt. Just logically lay everything out before you start tightening everything, because some things cross under, there's clips, there's everything that holds everything in place. Everything has its own happy home. So yeah, there's a lot of little connectors, but here it is. Engine bay is starting to look whole again. Now, we're not going to install the battery again because we are going to be doing this timing belt, so we're going to need that space. But here we go. After doing the valve covers, everything is packed back together.